Welcome to the channel everybody, and today let's talk about a classical match from the Portuguese league that will happen later this week. Porto will be playing against Benfica, one of the, if not the biggest rivalry, the biggest match in Portuguese football. I would say even in Portuguese history, but this year's is special because Porto is not doing so well. They're now currently third, which is kind of normal because usually Porto, Benfica and Sporting are first, second, third, within a couple of points of difference, but Porto is falling a bit more behind and they went through a lot of changes. Their president changed, they changed their coach, and Benfica actually also changed their coach, but way earlier in the season, and they're actually now playing really well. But Benfica just won 3-2 today against Farense, the team that sits in 17th in the Portuguese league, out of 18th. So not the best team, but not the worst. Of course, a lot of people, and I agree, saying that Farense is not as bad as they look. They play well, they played well against Benfica, but Benfica kind of fell asleep. And that's my point here. And I think Benfica needs to be very careful. In my opinion, they have the best squad from Porto, Sporting and Sporting Braga as well, because Braga is in the same point total as Porto at the moment, so they are in fourth, but they have the same amount of points, so they can also challenge for third place or even second place. I think winning for them the league is very much out of reach. But when it comes to Benfica, they have the best squad. Not only they have the best players, of course Porto and Sporting have great players too, but I think Benfica has the most depth and the most quality of depth in the Portuguese league. Sporting, for an example, they are going through a lot of injuries. A lot of their players are tired or not 100% to compete. Porto, I think finally Martin Anselmi, which is a coach that I really enjoy, finally discovered the right team to use, because I think it was the first time since he arrived at Porto that he used the same squad twice in a row. So he first started with like 3 in the back, then he came back to 4 in the back, then he kind of changed the midfield. I remember the first game that I watched, he was using Eustáquio, a midfielder of Porto, to play from the back as a central defender. Then he changed a little bit his ideas and whatnot. So I think he finally found what he wanted to do, what he wants to do in Porto. Well, Benfica has already a way more established system. I think Bruno Lage is doing a great job. He was already at Benfica. I think he made the team play with a bit more willpower. I think they made the team have clearer ideas, and he also does a good job in the press conferences without being too much that classical robot answering the questions. Sometimes he offers a bit of his individuality and perspective, and I think he's doing a great job in general. But it's not the first time that I see Benfica kind of falling asleep, if you understand what I'm saying, and I'm afraid that might be a problem against Porto, because Porto finally discovered their path, they finally discovered their rhythm. They didn't play great against Estoril, they won 2-1 with a beautiful goal from Rodrigo Mora, only 17 years old and already spreading magic in the Portuguese league. But I think Porto can have a bit more of will, and they will not fall asleep as easily as Benfica might. Of course, being a classic, being a rivalry can change things a lot, right? And Benfica will have Florentino in the midfield. He didn't play today against Farense because if you received a yellow card, he wouldn't be able to play against Porto next match. Di Maria also coming back from injury. He played a bit against Gil Vicente. Now he played almost a full game, if not the full game, against Farense. But I kind of think that Di Maria is reaching that phase that he's like Cristiano Ronaldo for the Portuguese team. Still a great asset, but now these teams have to really press a lot and be very intense in their play style, especially if you're always aiming for first place. So, and I think Di Maria, yes, he gives a lot of quality with the ball, in passing, he brings a lot of magic, but Feirense was able, for example, to explore very well today the side of Di Maria. As well, Samuel Dal, which is a great player actually, was playing out of position as a right back, I believe. And so Di Maria defending poorly, not pressing much, and having not a truthful right fullback, of course, open a lot of holes that the Farense team could explore. But I think it was too much. I think it was for a team competing for first place. It was that right side of Benfica was too open, and Porto is galvanized, is coming forward. Not his, they are coming forward with great technical players as well. Because Pepe, he's not the most consistent player, but he's very creative. He has a lot of technique. And Rodrigo Mora as well. Fábio Vieira can come in through. Even Gonçalo Borges sometimes have some sparks of imagination, and it really helps those players be more in game or be more on their game when you have a Di Maria that doesn't help defend. And I'm not sure if Benfica will have Tomás Araújo available because he has like this kind of serious, not really serious injury that can be managed accordingly, but the player can play on 100%, they can play the whole matches. It's a bit complicated, so I think Benfica might struggle. So I think it will be better to not rely so much on Di Maria right now. Yes, it's good to have him fit, it's good to have him ready to play and to help the team, but I think he might actually be more of a problem than a solution, if you know what I'm saying, because Benfica can still have more, not more creative players than Di Maria, that's very difficult, but they can have very good creative players anyway that help defend and that help bring consistency to the team, especially if we can use, not if, they can't use Tomás Araújo at their full potential. And Tomás Araújo is actually a central back, not a right back, because for some reason they only had one good right back in Ba that got hurt earlier in the season. So now poor transfer and squad management. Now they're playing with a central back, which has been doing quite well, I have to admit. Tomás Araújo has been doing pretty well, but he might not be able to play the entirety of the match, and he might not be able to even play at all, and if he does play, he will not be at his full power. So having somebody in front of him, as in the wing, because they might use a more defensive midfield, perhaps, with Florentino Luis and the other midfielder that came from Luxembourg. Now, he was playing in Germany, Leandro Barreiro, if I'm not mistaken. Renato Sanchez played today against Farense, but came out at halftime. I don't know what's going on. So I think if Benfica wants to use Di Maria and not being able to use Tomás Araújo at full power, they need to really structure their team a bit different in order to protect more that right side. I think it was too frail. And Martin Anselmi, I really like him as a coach. I think he still needs to give more results in order for people to start realizing that he's good and he can lead Porto to glory. But I really think he thinks out of the box. He brings innovation, he brings uniqueness, he brings individuality. And I don't think Bruno Lage can... I think he might get stuck. A lot of people do criticize Bruno Lage because he's very not flexible when it comes to his tactics and approach to changes. I think he improved on that aspect personally, but I still think that Martin Anselmi being more creative and bringing more uniqueness and individuality to the game, I think he can caught him off guard, especially overloading that right side that it seems to be a bit weaker. But in the end, I think it will be a great match. I think the league in itself will benefit if Porto gets healthier and stronger. I think Martin Anselmi is the right coach for the situation of Porto, which is, of course, Porto wants to achieve greatness, but they have to dig themselves out of the hole first, while being consistent, while being able to attract players. It was amazing they were able to attract Samuel Moradion, for an example, which is a wonder kid, potentially one of the best strikers in the world, and he's playing at Porto. He's not loaned. He is in the squad of Porto. He's owned by Porto, right? I think another great player which could stay at Porto, which is Fábio Vieira. He's loaned from Arsenal, but I don't see him having an active role on Arsenal in the Premier League. He is good enough, but I don't think he's consistent or he has enough intensity to stay at the Arsenal, at the club in London. I think he'll be way better to stay at Porto because he's a complete baller in the Portuguese league. Most defenders can't handle him, and then I think actually Martin Anselmi can take the most out of Fabio Vieira because he likes to play forwards. Martino Tami likes to draw the creativity out of the players. He's giving a lot of time and opportunity to Rodrigo Mora, for an example. And just imagine Pepe on the right, Fabio Vieira in the middle, Rodrigo Mora on the left, Samuel on the front, versus Di Maria, that doesn't help defend, a not very good right back, right? And then Álvaro Carreras goes forward a lot, and sometimes the midfield of Benfica struggles to cover his investments. So imagine if that is the front four that Porto is going to use, it's going to be very, very strong. I think Benfica really needs to be careful in preparation for the next match. Just to conclude here the video, I think Benfica is better than Porto right now. I think Benfica has a better team than Porto as well. Pavlidis is playing really well. Kokshu is playing really well. Artur, I mean, I don't think he has the right intensity and the right amount of magic to be a key player for Benfica, but he's been scoring goals. He's been getting assists, so he's been doing the job. I think he could give a bit more energy to the game, but not all players are like that. Not all players can do that consistently. Some players, when they press a lot and they give a lot themselves to the game, then they lack energy and mental clarity to be creative and magical. You know, not all players can do everything at the same time, you know? So Benfica needs to be careful, they need to prepare the game. I think they know they are better than Porto, totally. But Porto, with a very, very dangerous front four, can surprise a not well prepared Benfica, and the Benfica that is not in their best shape defensively, especially on the right hand side. So make sure to watch the game at the same time. No, actually, on the day after, Braga will play with Sporting, which I think Sporting will win. I don't think Braga can compete with Benfica and Sporting. Braga did win against Porto, 1-0 if I'm not mistaken, but Anselmi was still knowing the house, like we say here in Portugal. Ele estava ainda a perceber o que a casa gasta. He was still understanding the expenditures of the house and knowing the corners of the house, getting the tactics straight and whatnot. At the time, Braga was actually improving a lot under Carlos Carvalhal, which he's been doing a lot, very well. And actually, I thought about this earlier today. This might be controversial and might not be accurate. This is very a subjective perspective, but I think Sporting actually has the worst coach out of Benfica, Porto, Braga, and Sporting. Rui Borges is not a bad coach for the Portuguese league. I think he's a good coach. He was doing a great job at Vitória de Guimarães, of Vitória Sport Clube. I think Bruno Lage is not he's not super far away in terms of quality, but I think he has more experience. I think he worked like abroad at Wolves. I think he was Carlos Carvalhal assistant manager at Sheffield or something like that in England as well. Martin Anselmi, I think, in my opinion, he's the best coach. He still has to learn and improve. He still needs to adapt to this new scenario, but he did great work at Independiente del Valle, for an example, at Cruz Azul as well. I think he has the potential to really bring a change, but he's in a very difficult environment at Porto. And Carlos Carvalhal is actually surprising me a lot, because I never seen him as a great coach, but he is. But the way he improved Braga, the way he brought consistency to the club was really, really good. So I think Sporting needs to be careful because they have a lot of physical, not fit players. I think their coach is a bit underperforming, I believe, or he's not being able to deliver his ideas correctly. I've seen a couple of matches from Sporting, and I think they rely too much on Gyökeres for sure. They're also lacking very important players. But I think Benfica ultimately will win the league, and I think Porto will improve a lot, but I think Sporting will not drop as many points as necessary for Porto to come in and fight for the title. But let me know what you think in the comments down below about the next game of Porto versus Benfica. Let me know what you think about Braga versus Sporting. Let me know in general what you think about the Portuguese league and the race for the title in general. Thank Thank you for watching, and I see you on the next one.